When I ride Amtrak, I'm like most people. I like to listen to interesting and unusual podcasts and just mind my own business. And that day when I was riding from Fairfax, Connecticut to Washington, D.C. was no different. I was listening to a podcast about the golden age of grave robbery, and I was doing just fine. I was sitting in the cafe car with 3 other passengers at my seating area who I didn't know. It was clear to me that those 3 other passengers also did not know each other previous to being on this train as well. But I noticed something that was quite unusual about this group, and that was that they weren't listening to their iPods or looking at their iPhones or working on their computer. They were engaged in lively conversation. I thought to myself, wow, that's amazing. At one point, though, the older woman who was sitting next to me leaned over to one of the fellow passengers and said, "Hey, how much longer is my trip until I arrive at my destination?" He said, 5 more hours. 5 more hours? For crying out loud! At that point, I felt obligated somehow to join this group's conversation. So I leaned over to the older woman and I said, "Hey, I'm not that bad." And I have to be honest with you, I didn't think my joke was funny the least bit. But somehow, my co-passenger did. And next thing I knew, she burst out into laughter. For the next 3 minutes, I misunderstood everything she said, with a similar result. After those 3 minutes, it was like the old woman and I were old friends. But then, for some odd reason, she says, "Hey, why don't we play a game of Guess My Ethnicity?" I wasn't sure what to make of it, and I'm not sure that my fellow passengers were up for it. But I thought, hey, why not? So the clue she gives is Hava. And I'm thinking to myself, well, Hava, Nagila, the Jewish dance, this person's got to be Jewish, right? Is completely innocent. But I didn't tell her that. I just said, you know, you're totally Jewish. You're a fellow member of the tribe. And she, oh, how did you know? Like her eyes lit up like a menorah. And it was like a kid in a candy store. And she said, how did you know? How did you know? There are not that many of us out there. And I'm just thinking to myself, lady, you're from New York City. You can't meet other Jews? But I didn't say anything. And I could have just told her how I knew, and that was just a guess. It was just a fluke. And I just said, oh, you look Jewish, you talk Jewish, you're clearly a member of the tribe. And I was just thinking the whole time, I hope she doesn't figure out my lie. Fingers crossed. But I just plowed on, and she was so happy that I knew that she was Jewish, because she was really trying to say that she was Cherokee. And I don't know how Hava adds up to Cherokee, because she never told me. That wasn't really relevant anymore, because once I pegged her as being Jewish, she was giving me the bump and high-fiving me and saying Hava Nagila, and she's wanting to buy me drinks, and like I didn't know what to think. But I said, oh, okay. But then she and I started talking about her childhoods. And it turns out she had kind of a rough childhood, and I had, not the best childhood. Kind of hard dealing with other kids when you're a kid as well. But then I wasn't prepared for what would happen next, because then she burst out into tears. Why are you kids so mean to me? Why are you so mean to me? Why are you so mean to me? was a real head rush because I didn't know what to do, because I felt responsible for her happiness, but then I felt responsible for her bursting out to tears on her new trauma. And like, other people were noticing, and I didn't know what else to do. So I put my arm around her and I let her put her head on my shoulder, and I said, "It's okay. It'll be okay. It'll be okay." And before I knew it, it was okay. And once again, she was happy, and her eyes were once again lit up like a menorah, and she was high-fiving me and giving me the bump and saying Hava Nagila, and she was holding my hand, and I don't know how I felt about that, but once again, she was happy and she wanted to buy me drinks, and I was thinking, I hope she doesn't figure out my lie. Fingers crossed. But she was happy. And it wasn't just that she was happy and I was happy, and that like I'd never found happiness on an Amtrak train. And it wasn't just like the comfort or anything, it was just like the environment. It was like this one big party, because everybody else was happy, not just my fellow passengers. I could see the vibe through the train as she was giving me the bump and saying Hava Nagila and high-fiving me. And as we moved closer to Washington, D.C., and it was clear that it was about time for me to get off, I reflected on my time on that train, because I always remembered how my parents had told me that you shouldn't lie, but at the same time, I remember, and particularly my mom saying, that there was always this exemption, and that was the exemption of the white lie. The white lie is when you tell a lie that serves the sole purpose of making someone feel better. And certainly, after telling this white lie and thinking, fingers crossed, she doesn't know that I'm lying, she certainly felt better. And everybody else felt better. And as I was preparing to get off the train and grabbing my luggage, I was like a celebrity, so I felt good, pretty good too. And as I prepared to debark, I realized that the old woman found comfort in knowing that there were other Jews out there like me. And as for me, I felt comfort in knowing that just for being Jewish, I could get free drinks. Thank you.